Hey now, all right, we are live. It is Rob here from Rob's School of Music, and I am hanging out with the legendary Jennifer Batten. Hello and welcome.
Thanks for having me. Just to see that gorgeous guitar behind you was worth showing up for.
Oh my God, if I hit a different angle, you can see it's just absurd. I have the disease, the guitar player's disease, where it's just I love pretty things and.
Right. Yeah. Well, money's got to go somewhere. Why not to the guitar company?
I like that. Money's got to go somewhere. I'm going to tell my girlfriend that.
Yeah.
No excuse. So, we're a music school. We do lessons, all different instruments, all ages, all skill levels. And when COVID hit last March, we kind of pivoted and brought everyone online. 13 months since, we've done over 5,500 virtual lessons, myself and the other teachers who work here. And since last April, I've been doing these weekly live stream interviews with just some of my heroes and incredible musicians. And, when I had my initial list of people, I ran through my mind of people that when I was coming up, I just were pivotal in me wanting to be a guitarist. And I truly can say, you are one of my first or earliest guitar memories, just watching you.
Wow.
Yeah, just watching you at the Superbowl and the stuff with Michael Jackson, it was just so striking. The theater almost of the interplay between the two of you and just all of it. So it's so cool to get to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing what this streaming world lets us have access to. I mean, Jesus Christ! In my school, we had Steve Lukather hang out with us last Monday. It's like, when would so many people get a chance to just hang out and hear stories of how Rosanna came about? Wow. It's really inspiring for people, and hopefully I'll plant seeds out there to the guitar world, and maybe, who knows, you be sent in an entirely different direction from something that pops in my head.
That's really, that's the coolest thing about this, is just getting to kind of the value that comes from the stories and the access that, artists such as yourself just have been so generous to provide to the world, and then sort of have these hubs on YouTube where you can go to different channels and just cycle through all these videos with all these incredible people telling stories. So for your story, what was there a particular band or show or record that you came in contact with and said that this is what I want to do with my life?
I think there's a lot of triggers along the way, but I was one of those people who sat in front of a black and white TV watching the Beatles hit America, and it was so exciting because people's energy was not as scattered, nowhere near as scattered as it is today. I mean, we didn't have the phone, the iPad, like 95 channels and on and on and on, and Netflix, and it was 3 channels. So everybody was watching the Beatles. And I imagine my little town in upstate New York at the time was like many towns across the country, where everybody was into it. And every Beatle record or Rolling Stones at that time record that would come out, the first person that got it, everybody would run over to their house to hear it and look at the album cover and memorize how it looked. It was just such a different time, and so such a similar community as opposed to how scattered it is right now.
I like that perspective. I think that's very, very true. Within the school here in the waiting area, back when we had people waiting in the waiting area, we would always have a record on or a concert on the TV. When I say a record, I mean like a physical, actual piece of vinyl on a turntable.
What's that?
Exactly. And like kids would come in, elementary age kids, and be like, what is this? But what was really exciting is like the teenage ones, the high school ones, they knew what it was, and they were starting to collect themselves. And that was like, wow, like tangible music is coming back. You open it up, you can smell it, you can read the credits, who played on this. And so I know everything is still, there is no going back to the good old days when we could focus on maybe just 1 or 2 things at once.
Yeah.
It's inspiring to see that these younger, musicians and younger people in general are just starting to look back into these tangible musical mediums. So
you know what, speaking of that, a friend of mine just discovered on Amazon, you can actually get that experience of seeing the artwork and who produced it and all the session players that are on stuff now. I'm not aware of that, so I'd like to jump over there, because it's like a huge part of the yeah, I'm gonna say thing for lack of better thing. I had a COVID shot today. I'm gonna blame everything on that.
That's okay. I beat you up. Was it the first one or the second one?
Second one.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. You in 24 hours, you may not feel so good, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about it.
But that's so true. And even like, I'm scattered now in what I'm talking about, but like for what we try and do with our students is we always, hey, we all want to be, when we grab the guitar, I wanted to be the next Eddie Van Halen. Kids want to be the next John Mayer, next Taylor Swift, whatever it is. But the reality of it is there's so many other places in music as a thing where you can make a living and have a really successful career, and looking through those liner notes and seeing who are the session players, who is, it blows people's minds that the people they see on stage in the band aren't always the people that you're hearing on the record. Those are two very different avenues you can go down. And there are a lot of possibilities. And that's part of, this concept of interviewing people is showing, there's so many musicians out there that you've heard 1,000 times that you might not know the name, you might not know the face, but they're playing.
Sure. Yeah. Steve Lukather, case in point.
Yeah, exactly.
He's probably on a good percentage of records that people own, and they might not realize whether it's Lionel Richie or Michael Jackson. That's the guy playing the rhythm and beat it while Eddie Van Halen is soloing.
Yeah. And then you're the one who gets to do all of it in real life.
Well, that's part of being a musician is you have to do all of it, unless you're in the top 1% where you can make a really good living off of your one band. Then you're in 10 bands and teaching and producing and doing sessions and whatever you can get your hands on, which is great. Having a huge variety of things that you do only makes you stronger in every area,
Completely agree. So I guess I was going to put this part off, but I'll just jump right into it. So, that decade with Michael Jackson, the 3 giant world tours, the Super Bowl, playing a billion plus people watching, like that is the gig of all gigs, the coolest possible thing. And the groove and the pocket and the level of musicianship that he always surrounded himself with. How did you find yourself in that position? And then what was that like?
Well, it was luck in being in LA, which I tell people you can be anywhere now, but because I was there and because at the time I was teaching at Musicians Institute, they had started a referral service and I had already been an instructor there. So, people knew me from that. And one of Michael's people called up and said, send us a couple people to audition. And I was one of the lucky people that got the call. In fact, the woman that called me, I came home to my answering machine. There was 3 messages in a row. It's like, Jennifer, I got something cool for you. You got to call me back. Like 20 minutes later, where the hell are you? This is exciting. You got to call me back. And the third call, she goes, okay, I'm going to tell you. It's an audition for Michael Jackson. Call me back for information. And of course, I lost it. and I asked when the last possible time I could go audition would be so I could stay home and work on the tunes. I didn't want to go in there half-baked, and I just canceled everything for 2 days or something. I bought my first CD player. That's in 1987. It wasn't, not everybody had those.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to hear things clearly. And so I came in prepared with, I don't know, Billie Jean, the top hits that were out at the time. And my band had already played Beat It. So I knew that solo and had been playing it for a couple of years. So at least I didn't have to learn that and go play it, And then I walked in and there was no band. It was just me and a video camera. Wow. And the only guidance I was given was to play some funky rhythm because, although I'm known for playing the Beat It solo with him, it's a 2.5-hour show and that solo is only 16 bars. So you got to do something for the rest of the time. And that was groove. And man, I was playing with some of the best groovers on the planet. Greg Fellinganes, monster keyboard player, such a child prodigy. Ricky Lawson on drums. It was one of those experiences where when you're growing as a musician, generally you don't realize that you're getting better. It's just like you're here and you want to be here. And then when you're here, you want to be here. It's always, you never catch the rabbit, right?
Yep.
So after the tour was over, after 1.5 years of playing with people of that level, I remember coming back and playing with one of my old bands going, how come you guys suck now? What happened to you? Because I got used to that pocket that is unsurpassed. And those guys, man, I mean, some of the tunes like Working Day and Night, on the record, it's like, you got me working day and night. When we played it live, you got me working day and night. It's just ridiculously fast. And if you don't have guys that are super funky naturally, I've played with some tributes that really should not have tried doing the live tempos, because it can just be a train wreck. It just doesn't feel good, you know? So anyway, I'm blabbering because I'm tanking up on my second coffee of the day.
That's okay. The Rock just put out these new energy drinks, and I'm like addicted to them now, and they get so insane. So we're both about to start spazzing out. It'll be awesome. We're on the same wave, so we'll just climb together.
and then this happened. And then
people, when they rewatch the podcast version, they'll play it slower instead of faster, just so we sound
good idea.
You know, it's when someone comes to me and they want to play guitar, even if they want to start out and they're like, I'm a metal guy or something like that, I insist that they learn how to do funkier stuff like that, and just really learn how to the pocket, the groove, just really lock into it. There's someone here. Hello, Samantha from Winnipeg. Hello. Someone is chatting here, so I'll say hello to her. So it's I think for me as a guitar player in my journey, I started playing rock music as well. And then after college and after touring and doing my own music, I had a son and I had to pivot. So I started doing like corporate gigs and wedding stuff like that. And I played my fair share of Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson songs.
Sure.
Watching how fun and that, to be completely honest, that's how you can tell a good band from a bad band, because if you can't hang on that stuff, then there's a lot of stuff you're not going to be able to touch, because it's just you're just out there. It doesn't feel the same way, you know?
And some of it is very deceptively simple. Yeah. You know, people go, it's just pop music. And then they play it and you go, it does not feel like it's supposed to feel. You need to go back and tear apart and see the kick drum is not a shuffle. It's similar, but different.
Yeah, those nuances. I mean, just in prepping for this, you know, I was digging through tons of YouTube videos and I was just losing myself in the musicianship all around, just watching the interplay with yourself and the entire band. So what were the rehearsals like? Was it the same musicians, say on the Bad Tour or the Dangerous Tour? That like, how does that?
They were very different. The Bad Tour was the most intense of all. That was the first time Michael had his own band without his brothers, and he gave it his all. I mean, we rehearsed for 2 months. You know, before that, I'd be in a cover band and we'd go, let's play 2 new songs tonight. We'd go rehearse for a couple hours and then play them that night, you know, just hope that it didn't train wreck. But we had the band in one room for a month together, singers in another room, dancers in another room, getting down basically the Victory Tour. So we had live cassettes from that cassettes, you know, 1987 from that show. So we could get the forms. Some of the forms were different from the record and the tempos down. So we worked on that stuff, man. Once we had the tunes down, well, I guess during the whole process too, we were working on sounds, and it looked like NASA. I mean, there was techs, there's no white lab coats, but there was techs programming the whole time we were rehearsing. And as far as the keyboards, because that was really, keyboard heavy music, and you have to have those sounds that are on the record. You can't just bring your Rhodes and say, okay, let's do 2.5 hours of Michael, you know? So it wasn't as demanding on guitar, but still, I really stepped it up with guitar with my first Bradshaw rack, and just ridiculous. I mean, that was before multi-effects, right? So I had one rack space for chorus, another one for reverb, another one for delay, and the MIDI switcher. And I had a Strategy 400 Boogie Power Amp and 2 Boogie Mark IIIs, one whole amp in the rack set for clean, the other one set for dirty, so I could switch between them instead of switching in the same amp. It was just insane. I mean, it took like 3 guys to lift it. It was the size of a refrigerator, and now it's here.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so incredible. I mean, like one of the questions I ask to everyone, I'll ask you as well, you know, what is your preference? Would you rather go out with 2 amps or, you know, an Axe effects or something, you know, where you can just, and everyone is so, those who know what it used to be like to have to carry around all that gear, and you know, one cable goes bad, that, you know, even if everything goes down, like I met Bob Bradshaw years back because I bought off the guitar player in Blind Melon, I bought his entire rig just so
Wow.
I have the switching. Yeah, it was insane. It was the weirdest thing. Like I wrote something found it on eBay, and I show up at the guy's house, and there's Roger Stevens from Blind Melon. I'm a Blind Melon fan. So I'm like, what the hell? What? He's like, hey, dude, come in. He offered me some tea, and we just hung out. But like, I understand that the technology and the weight of carrying around a rig like that. So I think everyone's a little bit spoiled now about how easy that you could just hit one button and just the entire scene changes from song to song to song.
Yeah. In fact, after the Bad tour, I had this refrigerator sized rack, and I go, now what? And so I cut it down. This is what I did. I cut it into 2 smaller racks on wheels, and I got a hydraulic lift for my little truck. I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount of work to go make a sound, And now I'm using the Thomas Blug's Amp 1. That's 3 pounds. You can fit it in your carry-on.
Yep.
It's tube, 4 channels, 100 watts, like a 100-watt Marshall. And when I first saw that at his house, I go, when can I have one? It was the prototype. And it was like torture to wait for 6 months or a year before it had gone through all the testing and I could actually get it, man. But it has arrived. It seems like everything I want is just like a year away. And now this thing can do that. And,
it's so easy. We have my entire pedal collection. Except for some of the more expensive boutique ones, but 80% of my pedal collection, I let my students borrow them. Kind of like library books. You take it out, you play with it.
Wow, that's great.
Just because I want them to be able to mess with, those sort of things, because it's very easy to fall down that rabbit hole of, oh, I finally mastered this piece of technology, but there's something new that I want and it's going to do it better. But then the learning curve and then how many hours can you dedicate to YouTube videos to learning how to, change it's a nightmare, but it's a nightmare that we love.
Oh, you can't make it to dinner without reading 3 manuals anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's streaming or lighting or, it's endless. And then if you don't use it for a couple of weeks, you forget and you got to go back and start over. It's, there needs to be a whole new therapy group for that.
Yep. We all go through it too. It's the worst.
Yep.
So when all this, there's so many facets to that entire decade. Something like the Superbowl, like how does that work? Like, because that's so many people were watching that. Like, is that a different type of rehearsal? Is that like?
Well, yeah, because it was, we did a couple medleys of things, and then Heal the World was at the end. So yeah, we definitely had a different kind of rehearsal for that. And honestly, it's the only time I ever felt like Michael was nervous.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine the pressure? It's one thing when you have somebody come into a club or even a large club, small arena, but when you got 1.5 billion people, it's like the entire world logged in, and they would stay up late because that was before DVR to see that show. I mean, people in Europe or wherever. Mm-hmm. And he seemed a little scattered to me, but he pulled it off. I was glad his name was on the marquee and not mine.
But just the hysteria of all of that. I mean, as a kid growing up, I remember watching, like I had Bad on cassette and then I had Dangerous on CD, and I listened to those albums constantly. And again, just like as a young person who was guitar curious at the time, but not really playing, I was just fixating on the riffs I was hearing and then seeing, just the interplay from anything you could see on MTV or VH1 or wherever it was, because there was no internet at the time. But the hysteria of the fan base, just these people having complete meltdowns. Like, what's it like to stand on stage and just see people disintegrating in front of your eyes? Do you just not even look out?
Oh no, we looked out. It's for the most part. I mean, we only ever played indoors in America. We did arenas, like 18, 20,000, but mostly it was outdoors in stadiums in Europe or wherever, Japan. And so there was enough ambient light. We could see people always. Wow. And it always I always felt a little detached. It just felt surreal. And I kind of felt, especially in the History Tour, when I had that horrible god-awful face mask, I just go, okay, this is not just about music. This is like a theater show.
Right.
I'm one of the characters in a theater show. But it was always entertaining that people would lose their minds. And it was actually very dangerous because they'd be in the melting sun in the summertime, waiting all day. They would get there as soon as the gates opened to try to rush and get to the front. And then they would get squished and they're getting dehydrated and the sun is beating down on them. And every day we would see people pass out and they would pass people over their shoulders to the front and the paramedics would get them. It's like, yeah, they thought that was a fun time. I mean, some people thought that if the paramedics got them, then they would meet Michael, which was never the case. But the most entertaining thing was the people in the front that were dressed like Michael. And there was always people in the front like that. They all had the gloves. They all knew the names of this. Well, not the names of the songs. They knew all the lyrics. So you would see people singing along with him. It was, not too many people could pull off what he pulled off. And in fact, I was in Japan one time and George Lynch came to our show and he goes, man, it must be incredible to be part of something this huge. And it just kind of hit me as like, really? Well, you're in a big band. Dokken was huge at the time. But then I thought, well, yeah, you're right. There's no comparison. I mean, Michael spent $1 million just on clothing.
Wow.
That was the budget for clothes. His manager told me it took $500,000 a week just to keep us on the road. That was just expenses.
Wow.
Because you got 100 people in entourage. There's techs, catering, security, hair and makeup, and on and on and on and on. And the hotel bills, the buses, and it was like moving a small city.
Wow. Yeah, that's like, it's in trying to process it, for anyone who doesn't know and rewatching this, or any of my students who see this, like, check out this stuff. It's at a scale that you can't really wrap your head around unless you see it. And it's so inspiring because as a musician, that's the dream, kind of, just to be in a mega band, like that's like I'm saying, it's like the gig of gigs. And then just to have done it and come out on the other side and just have those stories under your belt. It's just so incredibly inspiring.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a wonderful way to see the world. I mean, most bands, it is very expensive to keep a band on the road. So the managers are going to want you to work every day. And if you're not working every day, you got to be traveling to get to the next gig. But Michael was at a place in his life where he didn't have to do that. We worked 2 or 3 days a week. So we were on vacation, honestly. I mean, I was a fan of the music anyway, so playing was fun. But we were in Rome. We went to the Colosseum one day. We went to the Forum the next day. We're in Switzerland. We're all off to get our Swiss Army knives. And in Dallas, Texas, we all get our boots. And it was incredible. And of course, it was more money than I ever made in my life. And so it enabled me to buy my first house, which, just doing crap gigs as an average guitar player in a cover band, that's going to be a tough call. So it was a blessing. And the fact that he kept calling me back is not anything I ever took for granted until I had actually flown to London Heathrow and I had a really long layover. And he popped on the TV and announced, "This is it," which I didn't know he had plans to do anything. Oh. And I just look at that and I'm thinking, cha-ching, here we go again. And then he ended up hiring Orianthi. And I look back, of course, he passed away and the whole thing never happened. But I look back and go, man, thank God I didn't get that gig because I would have been spending money on new gear and the money wasn't going to be coming in. So things work out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so strange because, again, like growing up as a fan of the music and like, unless you're in the business, you don't put together that the band's changed, things like that. So, you were the guitar player. And then when all of that happened, like I've been working with PRS Guitars since 2006. So I've met her many times and seeing her pop up with him, I was like, well, that's a different girl. What's going on?
Typical man gets a girl half his age.
You know what? Like I've gotten to feature through this series a couple other, female guitar players. And I hate differentiating the gender part of it, but over 50% of our guitar students are girls, young girls who really shred. And it's so cool to see that. And it's so cool for them to have icons such as yourself to look up to and say, wow, like it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Boy, girl, doesn't matter. Like this is just a person who's a great musician, a great guitarist. And I think that's a great place to have in the history of all this.
Yeah. I really thought when I joined Michael Jackson's band, Prince already had Wendy and Lisa for a couple of years. And I think that might have been where Michael got the idea, so to make him so he was open to having a female on the gig. And Billy Idol had a female keyboard player. So I thought, now is the revolution. People are going to be seeing MTV and girls are going to start playing, and then crickets. Like 15, 20 years goes by and nothing. Yeah. And all of a sudden, now that everybody has decent speed internet and you can see people, I mean, I tell people there's not a week that goes by that I don't see some 7-year-old girl in Indonesia that can kick my ass. Right? They grow up seeing everybody, and they have all the tools to, when you're inspired by somebody, you can take that video, put it in an app like Transcribe, slow down 4 bars and figure out exactly what's going on, where they're playing on the fretboard. And man, if I had those tools when I was a kid, I'd be an entirely different player today for sure.
Right. Unstoppable. I talk to a fair amount of my students fall a little around 20 years or so younger than me. And I'm always like saying to them, like, guys, like if I had YouTube when I first started, if I had just access to the tabs, and I didn't have to record something off the radio on a cassette and rewind, and the DJ's talking over the end and I can't hear the part and he won't stop talking. And it's like all these little things that made it harder. The access now, it's a great time to pick up an instrument. 100%.
Absolutely. Male or female. And there are more females signed up for a School of Rock than males now.
Yep.
So women will, of course I get the female problems. Questions. What's it like to be a girl in the industry and all that kind of stuff? And women will go, considering I'm a woman, what do you suggest about being in the industry? And I said, you got no excuses now. Now people are looking for females. So, if you're in a band or you're auditioning for a band full of guys and there's a prejudice there, or there's a vibe like, we really don't want females here. There's plenty that do. Mm-hmm. So don't say, oh, nobody wants me. It's like, next. Right. Now's the time, man. You get women like Laurie Basilio. She's one of my favorites. She's, just so musical, great chops, super funky. Neely Brosh is a ripping monster and so musical. It's not just here's the scales. It's super musical stuff. So there's endless inspiration out there.
And it's like genres are wide open. Like I've had on the show 2 times Yvette Young from Covet, and she's tapping stuff and finger picking stuff, and it's just like so musical and cool, but it's not just face melting shredding. Like there's just different categories, and it's just the doors are open. Like it's about time. And it's being a teacher and watching it, these dads come in with their daughter and they're like, she wants to play guitar, and they're almost like questioning it. I'm like, yes, that's awesome. Yes. Let's go. Let's go.
As she should. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the playing side of all of it. So, something that we would come across often with, not so much piano and some of the other instruments, but guitar specific. A lot of the young guitar players they push back when we get into the theory side of things. And I try not to, at least in my personal teaching. Some of the other teachers here are a little different on it. I don't shove it down their throats. I always try and like make it maybe guitar specific, but what place do you think is that important in your opinion? There's no wrong answer.
It depends on what the student wants out of guitar. If they only want to learn songs, then that's what you feed them. I was like you, where I would try to spoon feed. Okay, here's the chords and here's the chord scale it comes from, so they can kind of understand how the progression works and what scale you're supposed to play over a certain chord. But some people have zero interest in that, so why push it on them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I agree completely. It's very specific. That's kind of our whole teaching philosophy, is we try to customize it within the best of our abilities to each student. Everything's one-on-one, personalized lessons. So if someone, say that, tell me 5 songs you love. Okay, I'm going to take those 5 songs and I'll find as much value in each one of those songs to teach you everything you can learn, within those parameters you've presented. But at the same time, it's exciting. Like, get into like modes, something like that.
Yeah.
Like someone who's just been caught you know, they just, every time the light shines on them and it's solo time, minor pentatonic all day long.
Of course.
Because it's awesome. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Once we start to go into something, you know, like we're going to play Lydian, check this out. You're going to sound like some kind of mystical coolness. How's this work? It's a difficult thing sometimes for people to understand. So if you were to teach someone that part of it, do you have any tips on making sense of that?
You know what? It's not competition because my school is only once a month, the virtual guitar cloud symposium.
I want to get into that too. The symposium.
Yeah.
All about that. Yeah.
Gretchen Mann and Daniele Gottardo approach mode teaching in a very different way than I've ever heard, because it is confusing, perpetually confusing to people. And they think modes is a fingering or, you know, and they basically said it's minor and it's major. Some of the majors, like the Ionian major, is one note different from the Mixolydian major, and the Dorian major is different than the natural minor. So I really like to break things down into the most simple elements so it doesn't seem overwhelming. Even like chords. I think everybody that gets their first guitar sees the chord dictionary and they bring it home and it's like 25,000 chords. And you look at that thing and go, nope, not going to happen. You know? and if you just understand that there are major, minor, and dominant chords, that's it. That it seems like, well, I can conquer this. You just start with a few fingerings, and if you want to get deeper, you get a few more. And, you know, if you get into jazz, you get a whole lot more. So simple is good. And I've found in the past from teaching it, I know that if I'm pushing too hard, they're going to start making mistakes. So, you know, spend 6 months on the Dorian mode. So what? You know, to the point where you get comfortable with that, you know, that sound, you know where you should play that, and you're good. Rather than trying to, I got to get the Phrygian this week and the Lydian tomorrow. It's overload, because it's one thing to play a fingering, but to really internalize it and feel free when you're soloing with it. I mean, it really takes a lifetime, but to get where you can just start, just be easy on yourself. No matter what. I mean, it's not just music. Whenever you're trying to learn anything, it can be overwhelming. When I first moved to Portland 17 years ago, I took lessons in stained glass. And there's so much to learn. I mean, there's the cutting, the foiling, the grinding, the putting the things together, the measuring. And it's like whenever the teacher would come to my chair, it's like, don't look over my shoulder. I don't have this together yet. But, you know, step by step, day after day, bam, I'm making windows, right? I know how to do this now. And then you get to the next level. In fact, stained glass is a great analogy to music, because there's a lot of different ways to work with glass. There's blowing glass. There's the glass beads that you do with a torch. There's stained glass. There's fused glass. And this woman that was teaching me was talking about fused glass when I was that you melt in a kiln. When I was working on stained glass, and my mind is like, overload, can't deal, no interest, not ever going to get into that. A year later, my garage had 3 kilns in it. You know, it's like, okay, I got this down. Now we can edge over here.
I mean, just to go off on that tangent, my mom 2 years ago she took a class on working with glass, and she does stuff with the kiln. And every holiday we get the most beautiful, you know, one of a kind pieces that she makes. But she explains, as you did, like it's a process and it's learning, and it's hard to get a new skill. And that's a really cool parallel that I can completely relate to unexpectedly. So awesome. So let's talk about your program. So I saw Mark Lettieri was doing a live stream with you maybe 2 months back, and I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? 2 people that so talk about it. What is, how does it work? Once a month, and how does?
Yeah, well, you know, I spent the first 2 months of COVID just sucking my thumb off in a corner. All my tours were canceled, like millions of other musicians. And you go, what am I going to do? There's no money coming in. What the hell am I going to do? I mean, I had a few Skype lessons, but I didn't have a load of students that would pay the bills because I'm always traveling, and people want to be regular with their lessons, and I'm just like, I'll be back in 6 weeks kind of thing.
Yep.
Now I had done a tour of a seminar I put together that I modeled it after TED Talks. There were so many things I wanted students to know that TED Talks, TED.com, if people don't know, there's people from all walks of life talking about rocket science and medical and music and everything. Everything they have to say is condensed into 20 minutes. That's it. So there's no fluff, there's no riffraff. And so that's the way I designed it. And I went to every Sam Ash store in the country and some colleges and all this other stuff with my buddy, Jesse Solomon. Like, thank God he was there because I destroyed my knee and I wasn't able to drive after the first week. But that's another story. That's just life kicking your ass like it does. And so I started thinking, wow, I wonder, obviously I can't tour and go to the stores. They're all closed and COVID. Let's do a virtual thing. And I had toured with Neely Brosh and Gretchen Menn not long before lockdown happened. And we all decided we wanted to do more shows. And I had toured with Vicky Genfan, done like 3 tours with her, Czech Republic and in the East Coast of America. So I called him up. We had a Zoom call, and I said, "Hey, I have this idea. I've done this seminar, which was 4 hours. It was a lot of material, and I know I'm very aware of the short attention span because I have it. It's like scroll, scroll, scroll." So having 4 people, that was my thing. Let's have 4 of us teaching. And I knew they were all workhorses. Like, they would get their courses together. They would get PDFs, videos, whatever support materials after the fact. And so I go, these people are great. So I said, pick 10 subjects that you're passionate about teaching. And so we would get together week after week and just kind of pare down who's doing what. Like, everybody wanted to do tapping. And so it ended up Neely and I both did tapping, but came from completely different perspectives about it. So it wasn't overlap at all. And we did 24 modules over a weekend. And on the Friday night, it's all morphing and getting better now. But at that time, it was a Friday night orientation where we would get to know students. And I ended up with 15 sponsors, which in COVID, I didn't think I would get a single one. And I got 15. They're not going to the NAMM show. Their budget has to go somewhere. Right. So it was really a wonderful surprise, and it allowed me to pay for marketing and stuff. So that's orientation was Friday night. Saturday, Sunday, put on your seatbelts. We did content all day long. 5-minute break between instructors, lunch break in the afternoon. Although we didn't even do that in the beginning. It's like, learn. And then on a Monday night, which is now going to be at the end of Sunday, we would have a special guest. And that's because when I went to GIT, which is now Musicians Institute, once a month we would have a special guest. We'd have Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour, Pat Metheny came one time.
So cool.
And they just hang with us and answer questions and talk about their careers. And it was so inspiring. And, 30 years on the road, I've made all these connections and know a ton of people. I just toured, maybe 6-7 years ago now with Andy Timmons and Uli John Roth. And for Uli, it would be too late. He's in England now. But Andy joined us on our, on our second event. Scott Henderson, I used to teach with him across the hall from him and MI. So he was the first guest. And I know that the people that join us would never, ever have access to these people. Mm-hmm. Not in that way where they can ask any question that they want. It's not like going to YouTube and looking at an interview. It's a completely different experience. And I think because it's private, people tend to open up more.
Sure.
It's not going to ever be live on YouTube. We had Steve Luca there last Monday. We had Steve Vai came, and he hung out for over 2 hours. And it was the most inspiring thing. He was just talking about a little bit about his life growing up, but more philosophy of music and art in general.
I just had him interviewed last week. Same thing. He just went deep on like life skills. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So
yeah. He's like the guitar sage. Really. Yeah, really. It just goes beyond, so far beyond notes. It was great. And I got Robin Ford coming up in June.
Wow.
So it's just a wonderful icing to the cake to have for me to be the host of bringing these people in, I mean, it's super fun for me anyway, but it is for the students. And, you know, we start with text chat, but if it's pretty chill, then they can open up and speak directly to them. So it's morphed. It was the four of us, and then immediately for the next session, Neely Brosh got a gig recording with Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo. So she was gone. I'm like, oh shit, now the core team is not the core team. And Gretchen suggested Angela Petrilli, so she did 2 or 3 things with us. And now what I'm doing, I mean, thanks to the sponsors, I'm able to bring in a couple people. So now we have 6 people. And I had Greg Koch came last time, and he's just a hoot. He's a comedian. He's an entertainer, but he's a super badass player in many, many genres. So I knew he would be great. He taught slide and talked about tone. He's coming back in June, and he's going to be getting into chicken picking, which we've never had in the symposium. It's like a smorgasbord for guitar players. Okay, you get a little slide. Last time we had my buddy Mundo Julirat teaching gypsy jazz, you know, and I didn't know how that would go because there's a lot of rockers that come in with us, and they loved it. I mean, everybody was thrilled with it, and one of them learned one of Mundo's solos by the end of the day and posted it in our members only page, which is part of the thing too. It's a community where, you know, if you post stuff on YouTube or wherever, you're going to get trolls. You're always going to get those thumbs down. And you go, yeah, so what if 10,000 people liked it? That one guy didn't. So I suck, you know? So, but in the members only page, it's everybody's rooting for everybody. So people that might not ever post themselves playing, they know they're going to get a thumbs up from us all. So it's, you know, it just creates a warm community of guitar players across the world. We had a woman from Zimbabwe. We got a guy from Holland that comes every time. There's a couple from Mexico City. We've had New Zealand, Australia. And for instance, somebody from Zimbabwe, we're not ever going to do a touring workshop there, you know? So for them to have access, as long as they got decent internet, which it was kind of sketch, but she was able to see most of what we do. It's just a really wonderful thing. And the thing I did not expect from it, when I first had this meeting, I go, okay, here's our seminar. We have our chosen topics, right? Okay, month 1 happens, and there's so much work behind the scenes. There's no way I could do it every month. So we skipped a month, and then the next month, the same people came back. Awesome. And I'm going, oh shit, what are we going to do now? You know, we have the same subject. So now we're scrambling to always have new material, and we're just cranking out stuff, which is great, you know, because once we have the material, we can use it for anything. And we're talking now about everything's recorded on Zoom. It's Zoom quality, but the content is there. And we're going to open it up to archives. So I don't know if it's going to be a subscription service or pay per video or whatever. But it's this growing beast. And honestly, after 30 years on the road and broken guitars and missing luggage and missed connections, I'm kind of done. I've done it, you know? I mean, I started at the top with Michael Jackson, and then I've done all kinds of other tours. And I mean, Jeff Beck was at the top too. That was the cream of the crop, really, because that's where my heart is more than anything musically. But I've had good gigs, I've had bad gigs, and when you have bad gigs and you're on the road, it's just like 10 times as bad as it would be if you could come back to your own bed, right? Yeah. So this is it for me. I got a local band I started a couple of years ago to try to tour less. So between that and the school, I'm hoping that, you know, if I jump on a plane, it'll be for a festival. You know, I'm gone for a weekend and back, and I can manage that and still be excited about travel.
See, I think that's so incredibly cool that to be providing, because it's about providing value, really. Like, you've built a community. It's similar to what I've got going on here. And like, for me, interviewing people is my way to open it up to my students. But then, you know, obviously at the level that you are, you can actually bring on these people to feature them in a completely different level. So to take that tier above, and then to have the archives, to have all that content, like, this could be a beast. Like you said, it's really exciting and cool. And we'll definitely link it up when I repost this so people can check it out. Because, you know, for me, when I first started, before guitar, I was into martial arts. That was my thing. And I always tell the story to my students. I studied at one school and I got my black belt there. And then one of my teachers went to a different school and it was a different style. And I started going there, and the new school allowed me to wear my black belt there until I learned enough of their skills to carry their rank and wear a black belt under their discipline. But my original school was, so they're shitting all over me. Like, oh, you cheater, you're cheating on us. You can't go there, blah, blah, blah. And I think education, you should learn from as many people as possible.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's about us as people growing, connecting, that transference of knowledge, the transference of energy, especially music, because like, you know, the way I bend is probably different than the way everyone else bends. And that's a good thing. So I think the more education out there and the more people learning from the more people and the access to people with 30 years of incredible experience, like the premium, you can't put a price on it, because it's just, when would you have had that opportunity? You know, I think it's so cool.
Yeah. And you know, I was talking about the orientation that we start everything off with. One of the last ones, well, I guess 2 months ago, we had an orientation, and there were so many people that were alumni that they didn't want to. Naturally, they didn't say, "Well, I am so and so, and I like this kind of music, and here's my favorite guitar," because they already did it months ago, and it just turned naturally into a testimonial about what they've gotten out of the school, and it was really heartfelt. And I forgot about it when the whole weekend was over, because there's so much going on. And somebody said, you should go back and look at that video. And sure enough, it was incredible. So now that video has been cut down and is on the homepage of Guitar Cloud Symposium, so people can get a feel of what other people are getting out of it. And it's, you know, it's so hard. I've been in this industry so long that I don't have the perspective of a 20-year-old anymore. You know, and so getting feedback from some of these people, I'm going, really? You like that one? I thought that was kind of so. So it's really important for me. And we do surveys after each one too that are totally anonymous. So like, let us have it if there's something you really didn't like. And it's really useful, and it's just improving all the time. So and I will say that every other month we do this. It has been 4 days. Now it's going to be squished down to just Saturday, Sunday, because it's a lot to ask of people's time over 4 days. And then every other month, I'll say the 4-day one also features a lot of sponsor giveaways. We've been sponsored for quite a while by Positive Grid, and you don't see it in this picture, but my Spark amp is back here. And every time somebody wins a Spark amp. So you might pay for a weekend seminar and walk away with an amp, a Luna guitar, a Tonewood amp, strings, straps, slides, just on and on. And we just got a new sponsor just because people know people and the word's getting out. Anatomy of Sound picks, which I'm waiting for my package to come in because they sound incredible. I mean, I haven't even played them, but the way the guy talks about it, it's like 3D picks.
Oh, wow.
You know, so it's kind of fun. And I was just listening back to, I see Adam Roach is listening to us. He's got a podcast called Become a Guitarist Today. And he joined us the last symposium. And I was listening to, he got 4 of the students to interview them. And I was listening back to that. And one of them was saying, you know, I didn't know anything about slides before, but because Rock Slide is one of our sponsors, it's really an incredible thing that's got a tapered end to it that makes it super comfortable on your hand.
Smart.
And she goes, I never would have heard about this had I not been to this weekend. So it's a win-win, Bob, in corporate talk.
I think it's so cool. Like, you know, I did over the summer, Victor Wooten had a music theory mini camp. And it was a similar thing. People all over the world, all virtual. I sat at my kitchen table or out on my porch for a whole weekend, and I learned. And I learned from, people were on there that you never think you'd get to sit there and ask a question to, and then in real time get that answer. Rick Beato was on there talking about ear training. I was like, oh my gosh, like how's this happening? And at the end I learned stuff. So I'll definitely link it up on here, and I'm going to push all my students to check it out. I'm going to check it out, and it's going to be really cool.
Yeah. Well, I will say that Gretchen Mann and Daniele, they're a couple. They've been with me for months now, and they're gonna, everybody's getting vaccinated. They're going to take off to Hawaii, so they're not going to be with us in June. And at first I'm in a panic, like, my core is gone. Well, I just started to think for a day. I got Dave Martone is going to join us. He's going to be doing 2 months straight. And what I was going to say, every other month, we don't do the long weekend or the sponsor giveaways. We do what's called a deep dive. So it's just a single day thing on a certain focus. And in July, we're coming up with Guitar Heroes.
Cool.
And we did it in January, and we had Jeff Beck, Van Halen, Jimmy Page, and Joni Mitchell. Vicky does the acoustic thing. And this time we're going to switch it up and have Dave is going to do Satriani. He's deep down that rabbit hole. And Daniele is actually going to join us in July and do Charlie Christian. And he goes, "What do you think of Charlie Christian?" I go, it's so cool. Because what are the odds that a lot of the metalheads that come here would ever be exposed to that music? And you can learn so much from different styles and different genres. So it's just exciting and growing, and you never know where it's going to go. I got Jude Gold coming back. He's going to be doing, he wrote a book on he's got a kind of a slap pop technique for guitar. He wrote a book on it. He's going to do a module on that. And then he said a module on capos. And I go, capos, really? And it's going to blow my mind because I don't use capos, and he's calling it the magic of capos. And he says, a lot of people don't realize how useful they can be and how many different ways you can use them. And of course, for singers, it's great because you can do all this, open chord kind of stuff to match your voice in whatever key. So I just talked to Gary Hoey today. So he's going to join us in September. So it's just, all these people I've known throughout my life, I'm just kind of bringing them back, and it's a really cool connection.
So cool. I think it's thank you, as a musician and a lifelong student, as we all are, just have something like that available. It's definitely a really cool thing. I want to get to, before we run out, I want to do my rapid fire questions with you.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I'm motor mouthing.
No, it's awesome. I'm telling you, it's exciting and it's cool. And again, just to have access to people like that, it's not very often that someone who has been in the industry for so long is able to say, okay, well, I'm going to talk to you about what I know, but I'm also going to let you meet every friend I've had along the way. Like,
yeah,
you can't buy that. That's just, you had to earn that throughout your career. And then to gift that to the rest of us, that's just really, really cool of you. So,
wow, it's fun is what it is. That's why it's happening. It's fun.
Awesome. It has to be fun. Someone interviewed me the other day, and I said, if you could say one thing about, what music to anyone who wants to do it, I said, have fun. You gotta have fun. If you're not having fun, what are we doing? Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, Jennifer. So here's how we do this. It is a series of this or that questions.
Okay.
Try your very best to pick one of them. Sometimes you'll want to say both. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. They're all musical related, nothing political or anything funky, just music. Humbucker or single coil?
Humbucker.
All right. Les Paul style guitar or Strat style guitar?
Strat.
Okay. If it were to be, if you had to choose then Strat or Telly, probably still Strat, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about if you had to pick a Les Paul or an SG?
Neither. I know I'm breaking the rules already. I was thinking I had to play an SG at a rehearsal a couple of years ago because my guitar broke and that's what was there. And I thought I would like it and I hated it so much. So next question.
Yeah. I'm like 6'1" and they just dip down. The neck falls down. PRS guitars primarily. So that's like, it's similar in shape, but it's whatever. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I feel you 100%. Okay. Tremolo or hardtail?
Tremolo.
Alrighty. 22 or 24 frets?
24 is what I got now.
Cool. Thin, medium, or thick picks?
Thick. Well, I'd say medium. I use a 1.5.
Okay. 9s, 10s, or 11s?
9s if I had to choose. I've actually gone down to 8s, believe it or not.
Wow, awesome. Gosh, I have a friend who did that. He had something happen to his hand and he had to go down.
Yeah, that's why.
I snapped the high E string right away. Like
really?
But I'm just used to, I play 10, like somewhere between 10 and 11, depending on the guitar. So
well, you gotta switch to those Dario New York XLs, man. They don't break for me.
I just was literally just watching a video on that yesterday. Richard Fortis was talking about him. I was like, oh, all right. Now you're the second one. So now I got
okay.
All right. If you were to grab a bass, P bass or jazz bass?
Jazz.
Alrighty. For your fretboard material, rosewood or maple?
Rosewood.
If you were to grab an acoustic, Martin or Taylor?
Taylor.
If you're looking for gain, would it be amp gain or throwing a pedal in front of it?
Amp gain.
Okay. Tubes, 6L6 or EL34?
6L6.
Cool. And this one is more of I just put this on recently because there's this whole trend of lower wattage amps. So 100 watt amp or a 25 watt amp?
Oh, Jesus. Depends on the situation, but 25. My ears are fried.
Yeah, I just got all these little behind me. You can't see them, but all these like mini heads. They're like 30 watt recreations. I got like a Plexi and a couple others, and it does everything I need. I put it through the aux box if I need to. Yeah. Okay. Some effects related questions: delay or reverb? If you had to pick one.
Delay.
All right. Fuzz or overdrive? So like a fuzz face or like a tube screamer?
Tube screamer. Overdrive.
Cool. All right. Phaser or chorus?
Phaser.
Okay, that's the right answer.
Good.
Score at home. If you only had one on the floor, would you pick a whammy pedal or a wah pedal?
Whammy.
Cool. And then just a couple band related questions, some classic stuff. Not trying to start fights, but Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
All right, then we got to go. Is it John or is it Paul?
Paul.
Okay, I agree also. I feel like they're both geniuses, but I think if I hung out with John Lennon for an extended period of time, we would argue about things. I just feel like,
well, you need to do the same acid that John and Paul took.
That's what it is. Yeah. I got to ride the wave. It's not gonna work. Bowie or Dylan?
Bowie.
Zeppelin or Floyd?
Zeppelin.
All right. If it were to be Floyd, would it be Dark Side or The Wall?
Dark Side.
Cool. And then when it comes to Van Halen, is it Hagar or Roth?
Roth.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Well done. You passed flying colors, A++. And then my very last question for you before we go, I just want to thank you again, obviously, for your time. This has been so cool. And I could have talked for hours about a million different things. I tried to stay as focused as I could. I'm one who goes all over the place as well. But if someone were to be new to the music industry, they just are ready to go out on the road for their first tour or audition for their first big gig or something that's going to be a life-changing moment, what advice would you give them?
Enjoy the snot out of the moment. I think most people do this where they stress about their career. Like, where am I now? The same thing like music. I want to be here and I'm here. And then you get here and you want to be here. And we're here to be in the now and enjoy the moment. And before you kick me off, I want to say a shout out to Samantha, who's been here the whole time. Thank you.
Yes. She has many comments that I'm seeing here. So thank you for being present. And in the future, everyone watching this, we get, the replays happen. And all my students are usually in lessons or eating dinner now. So there will be plenty of people watching this in the future. So thank you guys in the future for watching this. Check out all of Jennifer's links, which will be below this. And hopefully, maybe when there's a NAMM show or something, I might get to meet you out there somewhere along the way. But in the meantime,
you never know, man. When I was at guitar school, we went down to a NAMM show and we were banned the next year because we're just a bunch of punk ass kids with no money, right? And so then we started lying our way in and making up fake business cards, and it got tougher and tougher and tougher to get in. I went for 20 years in a row and I was so burnt out. I took 10 off and didn't miss it. But I have gone back for Fishman, the triple play wireless MIDI system. I've done some demos for that. So who knows? I might be back.
You know what? It's the truth though. Like I went for 10 years solid and then things happened and I missed like 7 years straight and I didn't miss it at all. And then I felt like, who am I? Like I had an identity crisis. And then I went back just this past one, 2020, the last one there was. And I brought my girlfriend with me, who's the singer. We do music together. So it was cool to see it through like fresh, almost like NAMM virgin eyes, like, ooh, shiny things everywhere. And I'm like, okay, here's where the bar is. We'll get through it. It's going to be okay. And then, yeah. But awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to checking out all the stuff you have coming in the future, and stay safe.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Cheers.